to do it and they get stuck. It's just like she was saying, you have to be disciplined enough to get through that, no matter what you're feeling like. And I've been blessed to be able to work with Brittney on several occasions, and this is one of the things that we laugh about all the time, is that when people get done and they get down to the nitty gritty and they're like exhausted and they don't want to read their work, and we go, well, who else is going to want to read it if you don't, if this is how you feel about it? And so you have to train yourself and know that it is a process. It's not something that is going to happen overnight. And if someone is selling you that idea that you can, have it perfect in 30 days, you got to be like, okay, because you're going to have some rounds, you're going to have some bouts. And so keep that in mind as you're going forward, because it'll kind of let you know and set the trajectory on what should be happening, what should not be happening.
I'll just add that, first of all, I'm going to steal what Dr. Trimble said from now on. That sentence about a lot of people want to write, but don't want to write. They want to be someone who has written. That is a perfect sentence for me. The only thing I'll add, though, is two things. One is that writing, a lot of people think writing is a talent or an art. And I think, it can become art, but writing is really a skill, like a carpenter or a person who can cook, right? You got to learn the basics, and then you practice and hone it down until you're better than everybody else. And the other thing I'll say is that, when we talk about discipline and being consistent, a lot of people ask, well, what does that look like? Because a lot of people don't realize how much and how often, like, a professional writer has to write. And what I say is, even if it's 30 minutes every day, you got to dedicate yourself to a period of time where you're going to write. And if you don't feel like it, then you got to sit in that chair and look at your computer or look at whatever you type on and sit there. Because once you have that practice, then after a while you'll say, well, there's no use in me sitting here and not doing something. But the practice is it's just like, a basketball player shoots 300 shots every day, and a football player lifts weights, and every other, profession practices their craft and to get better at it. And I think writers have to do the same thing.
What I like to add is that to let go of the idea of competition, or let go of the idea that what you're writing could be similar to somebody else, because what we know is, like, there's nothing new under the sun. And a lot of things that stop writers are, a lot of times they'll think, oh, well, what I'm writing, somebody already talked about it. And yeah, somebody did already talk about it, probably 1,000 times, but there's nobody that's going to write whatever you're talking about like you. You are called for a certain audience, and if you don't write it, whatever message you're trying to get out won't reach that audience, because they may read something very similar from somebody else, but it'll never impact them the way that your words will if they're your audience. So don't let the idea that, oh, I want to talk about marriage, or I want to talk about what's going on in politics, stop you because 500 other people are talking about it.
Yeah, and what I would add, because I agree with everything that everyone has said, and so I would just add the two things that I feel like will make it easier to do all of this stuff that everyone has been saying, because yes, those are all the things that we need to do. But as we all know, it's really hard to do that stuff. And I feel like the two things that will make it a tiny bit easier, one is knowing your purpose, knowing your why, setting goals, having a vision, and being really focused on that is going to keep you motivated when you don't feel like doing the thing. And also community. I'm obviously really big on community. That's why I started CJ and Write. And I feel like when you have that community, that they can cheer you on when you just had a rejection, that can help you pick yourself back up. They can help hold you accountable to the writing practice that everyone has been talking about. So yeah, I just echo everything that everyone said, but I also feel like knowing your purpose, having set goals, and also having a community will make it a little bit easier to do all of these things.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was on mute. Thank you, everybody, for that input. The next question that I have is, how do you maintain a consistent writing routine amidst busy schedules and distractions?
I love this question. Okay, so for me and anybody that I'm working with, I make it an appointment in my calendar and I treat it like it's any other appointment. So I treat my writing schedule like it's a doctor's appointment, or if I have to like go to the kids' school or something, and I make it non-negotiable. I like literally will either take my phone out and say writing from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. or writing from 2 to 2:30, and I show up for that time. And so what I found is when I make it non-negotiable and I treat it as like a real appointment, not something that's like, oh, it's just, I said I would write and I missed the time, but I treat it like it's real, then I am more consistent with showing up, because I don't miss my doctor's appointments. I don't miss my hair appointments. So if I'm committed to writing the way that I am to everything else in my life, why would I not make it an appointment? So that's how I stay on track when it comes to writing.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say too, is that you have got to, like you said, make it an appointment in your calendar and be intentional. So many people just hope that they're going to write. That is never going to work. You have to be intentional about it. But it's also important for you to protect that time, because especially if you have a family, or even if you just have a really, really demanding job that's not writing related, you got to figure out what you need to do to be able to protect that time so that it will actually happen and that other things won't take over that time.
And that's one of the biggest things that I would say too, to piggyback on. Listen, y'all, I gotta get in here because on this screen I'm messing up everybody's name, and I don't want to just keep saying her and this. That's all. I'm sitting over here fidgeting with my computer because I'm like, why won't the camera just turn on? Like, why are you doing this to me? But that's the thing is, so many people just think, well, because I have this thing and I'm passionate about this thing, that it is going to outweigh everything else that I have going on in life. And that's one of the biggest challenges I think that people have, whether they're entrepreneurs, moms, dads, corporate workers, is balancing all the things to make sure that you still get this project done and done timely and with all the content. And I've been writing for years and years and years, and nothing works better than setting up the appointment and showing up for yourself. Like, I don't care where you write it down, if it's on the computer, if it's on your schedule, if it's having your family hold you accountable. When you set the time and you show up for it and you really give, like, no distractions, this is my time, I'm going to say no, you will be amazed at what will get done because you're cultivating that. And another thing that I would be thinking of to tell people is, when you know that your day is coming up, that you're going to write, say that's Tuesday and Thursday from 7 to 10 or whatever time you may have it, be preparing yourself for that throughout the day. Take little breaks in between to transition your mind to be thinking about that. Get that reading in, get that writing time, outlining, blogging in, celebrate that moment, like work your way up so that when you transition to it towards the evening, it's not a shock to your mind. You're not having to sit down for 30 minutes and say, okay, what do I do? Have your mind prepared for what you're going to sit down with for that appointment, just like you would prepare for any other thing on your calendar. What do I need to set in place so that I show up fully for this meeting? And don't be frazzled if, dang, I scheduled 2 hours and I was only able to commit to an hour, hour and a half. Give yourself grace, because you don't want to feel like even though it's a task, you don't want it to feel like a task. You want it to be able to be enjoyment and experience the joy in that. So that's something I would add to it.
So for me, I'm still grappling with this question. I've published a couple of books. I've got a lot of publications out there, been in a lot of anthologies. I do a lot of writing, but the discipline of writing still escapes me. I don't write every day. I set up appointments and break them. I've got a lot going on in my life, and writing often gets pushed to the side. And so the thing that I have to do to get any writing done is I have to, over the years, I've had to go on writing retreats where I actually have to, I was a member of this organization called Cave Canem, and we had 3 writing retreats. If you can have them over 5 years, and you go for a week away from distractions. Somebody else cooks your food. All you got to do is, write. That's your thing. And so I've been on a lot of those, and I find that is the only way I have been able to get writing done. And then I started making my own retreats where I would just get away from everything and everybody. For example, I tried to do some writing today. I have some stuff coming up, and people pop into my office. I just need 5 minutes. I just need 5 minutes. I just need 5 minutes. Everybody just needs 5 minutes, and I can never get any writing done. I have a deadline Friday, and that's the other thing that helps me. Deadlines, deadlines, because I know I'm going to get it done. So it's something that I still struggle with, this idea of making space for my writing. And I know that it's important. It's incredibly important to me, but I almost have to sort of trick my life into creating space to write. And so if there are people out there who sort of struggle with, this discipline of, or just, it's not even about discipline for me. It's just literally having enough hours in the day to get it done when you have people just pulling you in 75 different directions who don't get it. You almost have to create spaces for yourself to do the writing. And for me, that's been creating retreats, going on retreats, finding retreats, making retreats, even if the retreat is my own house, and pretending I'm, telling my husband, look, I'm writing. He gets it. And telling everybody else I'm out of town, I'm sick, whatever, so that I can have space to write.
Thank you so much. We have a couple of questions from people in the audience, so I want to get to those real quick. The first question I have is it's, how do you handle a creative block, and what methods do you use to spark your creativity?
I can go. I don't really believe as such in the creative block, so I shouldn't have answered first, probably. But again, I will go back to the question of practice. But another way that I sort of get over, let's say, a period when I'm finding it more difficult to write is to challenge myself to write for example, in form, or to write in a way that I don't usually do. So if I usually write freestyle poetry, I'll challenge myself to write a sonnet. It might be the worst thing I've ever written, but it doesn't matter, because at that point, what I need is like a vitamin to get over this feeling of not being able to write, right? Not being kind of the legit writer that can go on. And I tend to do it in sprints. So it doesn't sound like balance, but it works for me, and it might work for some of our viewers, where I will get, for example, a month, and I will every day write a poem. Now, I'm not expecting, anything out of my first drafts, but I know that after 30 days, I have 30 fresh drafts, and then I can spend months editing them and months working on them. But one thing that works is doing something unusual. And so, maybe even going to a museum, working off someone else's art, listening to music, going for walks, anything that, like, even physically moving will help, I think, to jog kind of the ideas.
Yeah, I just want to kind of piggyback on what Miriam said, because I too don't believe in creative blocks or writer's block. And what I mean by that is, yes, obviously, I know that people feel that, right? But if you keep telling yourself, oh, I have writer's block, then you will keep feeling blocked. So you've got to stop saying, I have a creative block, I have a writer's block. Stop saying that. And instead, just do exactly what Miriam said. Just start writing something or start doing something that will inspire you, whether it's going to a museum, going for a walk, listening to music, reading something. I had the privilege of being in this event with Erykah Badu recently, and someone asked her this question. And she gave this great advice of not seeing it as a creative block, but instead seeing it as your downloading season. So instead of saying, oh, I'm blocked, you're downloading all the things that will help you write your next great thing. So go do things that will help you continue to download the things that you need to download. Also, sometimes one of the things that I always encourage people to do is to write down 10 ideas a day. And all of those ideas are not going to be good. Some of them are going to be trash, but some of them will be good. So that's another thing that I like to encourage people to do.
I think I have found that a lot of times I agree with everything that's been said, because I don't really believe in block either. I think what really happens is that people get afraid of expectations, that you are trying so hard to be good. And I think sometimes if you let go of the idea of being good, like whether or not it's good, just think about this. Everything we write is terrible. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. You'll fix it later, or you won't. It doesn't matter. But two pieces of practical advice relative to that is, when you feel like I don't know what to write, start where you are. Sit down and literally just say, I'm sitting at this table looking at a picture of my cat's name, and just keep writing. Just say, okay, I'm not going to stop writing for 10 minutes unless just let your brain go. Don't try to make anything. Just let the making find you. And another exercise that works really good for block is to do something like Frank X. Walker did this exercise, where you take a mirror and you look at your face. Just look at your face for like 2 minutes, and then just start describing your face and think of where your face is going to lead you. I look like my grandmother Sadie, who was a crazy woman who loved to drink liquor, and it just leads you somewhere, and just go wherever it takes you. But a lot of times writer's block is fear that I'm not going to write anything good. And to be a creative, to be a writer, is you have to let go of your fear. You have to let go of the judgment sitting on your shoulder.
And go to a workshop. Look up a workshop on YouTube. Even there's so much information available to everybody for free.
Okay, so just just a personal question because this is something that I'm working through currently. And I'll get back to the questions in the audience. But I just want to see a raised hand for every writer who's read The Artist's Way. That's 2 out of 6, 3 out of 6 of you. That's pretty cool. Okay. I'm working through The Writer's Way right now. So I'm hearing a lot of like recurring themes from not The Writer's Way, the artist's way. I'm working through that right now, and I'm hearing some recurring themes that I've read through the book from what you guys are saying. Just make sure that it's like a practice of, doing it versus feeling inspired, right? So you just have to keep doing it. So I think that's pretty cool. Thank you for everybody's input. It was all pretty interesting. All right, the next question that I have here is from Lori. When a publisher asks you to pay them to publish your book, does that always mean that they are a vanity press, or is it okay in some cases to pay a publisher? Does that make your book less prestigious?
Oh, I guess I'll go with that one. Having the publishing company here. And so the first question was, does that make you vent? I want to make sure I heard you right. Or does that make your book less
prestigious?
So one thing I'll say about publishing is for publishing is subjective to each person, right? Whatever your desire is or your goal is, essentially you want to find a company that is going to go with what aligns with your vision for your book, whether that be putting it out there, the marketing of it, the presentation of it, or whatnot. I don't really believe in the whole, and I won't say don't believe in it, but again, when we talk about the legalities of what happens when people go traditional publishing or self-publishing, again, a lot of it is just dependent upon where you want your book to go and what you desire it to be. I don't think it personally makes your book less of anything, to be honest, because there are people that go with the top conventional, traditionally publishers, and then there are people that go with smaller publishing companies, and then there are people that self-publish it all themselves. So I think that to answer your question, I think that it depends on the person. Sadly, it's my lawyer answer. But the second part of that is, I don't think by any means, unless you're publishing with a janky publisher, which that's different. That has definitely different looks of what that looks like. But when you're paying your publisher, you want to make sure that you understand what you're paying for. You want to make sure you understand the contracts and the language. A lot of people will go with traditional publishing because it may provide them with a stipend. It may provide them with the means up front or the money up front to be able to do the things that they would like to do within their book, with their marketing plan. Some people will come up front and they'll publish. One of the things for me and my publishing company is, hey, we don't take rights and royalties and all of those things unless they're stipulated in the contract of those things, because it's your work, it's your project. However, that may make our fee higher, but we don't own your content. We don't own your stuff, and that's important. So again, it just depends on what you're looking for, what your plan is for your book, and how you see it. Whether rights and copyrights and things like that is important to you, or owning your material. There's a lot that goes into publishing. So, what it looks like, or if it's going to make your book less credible, to me is the least of the concerns, because you're going to be talking about the life of your book. And so I hope that answers the question the best way. If not, please ask something and I will clarify as much as I can.
Thank you so much. Does anybody else have any input on that particular question? No? Okay. Let's get to the next question. Octavia Karansky asks, how do you determine that a piece is finished? Thank you.
I think It can be hard to look at your work and say, I am completely done with it. Like sometimes you feel it in your soul that you're done with it. And I don't know much about like poetry writing. So if the question is about that, I'm sorry. But with a lot of other things, one of the ways that you can tell yourself that you're done is if like you are writing from an outline and you've gotten to the end of that outline. Because the thing is, when you're writing, every single time that you read it, which you have to reread it and reread it and reread it when you go through editing and things like that, you are always going to find something that you could add, something that you can take out, something that you can change. Even when the work is published and you read it, there's still going to be things that you feel like, oh, I could switch this around, which is why we have so many editions of things, because there's added things. But you have to, it's literally like you have to tell yourself, I have given this everything and I need to stop. I'm sorry, much, what is my words just jumbling up? It's like a forced stop, because if you do not force yourself to stop, you'll never publish it. You will never essentially finish it, because you will always be adding or changing something. So you have to kind of tell yourself, I'm done. I've written everything that I said I was going to write, and I'm going to hand it over to the next stage so that other people can read it.
Yeah, I completely
Thank
agree
you.
with that. I feel like a lot of us were kind of smiling when you read that question, because I feel like we don't ever feel that it's finished, and you just have to, like Brittney said, just come to a point where you're like, okay, I'm going to finally let this go. But as she said, even after something is published, like my book that was published last year, every time I do a reading and I'm reading something, I want to change it. I want to change something that I'm reading. And sometimes I do change it when I'm reading it out loud. So, I always think of pieces of writing as living things, meaning that they are dynamic, and that there is always going to be room for change. So you just have to get to the point where you decide, okay, this is good enough for now. And so I need to let it go, like Brittney said, so that other people can be a part of this now.
Now I'll piggyback on that. From this side of the publishing table, how do we know when we're done? When we get people that come to us, and this is why planning is so important and outlining is so important, because it does take the monotony out of the writing, out of the freelance portion of it. And for so many writers, because their mind goes so many different places, I always refer to people as, even if you've started your project and you didn't start with an outline, maybe create one, because at some point, the life of your book, you're going to want to tell it where to go and what to do. And so when you ask, am I done with it? My question that I ask to my clients all the time is, okay, do you feel like the book is doing what you set out and intended to do? That is a very simple question. When you go back and you reread it, is your audience taking away what you desire for them to take away? Does your audience understand this material that you have? When I work with people that do poetry, a lot of times we will list their poems out in the volume so that they match, the different headings or the different genres. Some people, will come with 150 poems and they'll say, look, I'm still going. Okay, how do we categorize them? These are the things that you're going to talk about when you're with your publisher, or you're with your book coach, or you're with someone that is guiding you to, am I finished? It's so simple as hiring a book coach, of someone that can look over your work from a professional standpoint, can say, okay, is this giving what it's supposed to give, or I feel like it was missing something. Something as simple as having other people look at your work is huge, because it gets an insight into, okay, does this work? And so a lot of people are afraid, or they don't want to share their work, or they're secretive. Find that buddy that you have, find that person you can lock in with, and let them critique it, let them look at it and see, because that's the best way, you're going to be able to get that message down packed if it's doing what it's doing, if that makes sense.
On the level of a single poem, I like to ask myself, have I been successful in genuinely communicating what I wanted to say, and how, sometimes we are hiding behind a metaphor and there's more to the poem. And another practical thing that I do when I feel like I'm nearing the completion is that I read it out aloud. And I listen then, first of all, to my voice. Do I stumble? Is there a place where something is uncomfortable, right? So I listen to my own voice, and I listen to my body in a way, because we know deep inside if we're not saying everything we wanted to say, or if we're not saying it, because it can be very vulnerable writing, especially writing poetry. So sometimes we